Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr. Today we're going to give a little preview of the opening round of my Best of the Decades tournament using season ticket baseball. This is the Best of the 1960s. And as always, you can follow the action by heading over to baseballmaelstrom.com where I have all of my projects on there. The Best of the 60s is going to be on there soon. We'll be starting that project probably within the week. The next week or two. So I thought I'd give a little preview of the opening round. And so the way this project works is top 5 AL and top 5 NL teams of the 1960s as determined by ELO ratings, which I've done another video, and you can check that out if you want to know how I reached those top 5s. In fact, I did a video on each of the American League, one video on the American League, one video on the National League teams, the top 5 teams in each league from the 1960s, so you can check that out. But now that we know the matchups and the lineups and that kind of thing, I thought I'd give a little preview of the first play-in round. And so it is a double elimination tournament, except for the play-in round. The play-in round is a best of 5 series, and the loser is knocked out of the tournament. The winner goes on to the rest of the tournament, and from that point on, it's double series elimination. So they have to lose 2 series in order to get eliminated. There's a winners and a losers bracket and so forth. In fact, if we look over at the one that just wrapped up, the 1990s, we can see kind of what the bracket looks like. I'll just show you what the bracket looks like. This is the 1990s bracket, but it'll be similar for the 1960s. I just haven't set up the graphic for it yet. And so as you can see, there's a little play-in round in the American League and a play-in round in the National League where the 4th and 5th seeded teams will play each other. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the 4th and 5th seed in the American League, well, number 4 is the 1965 Minnesota Twins. And they will be facing off against the 1964 Chicago White Sox, who are the 5th seed. So Minnesota is going to have home field advantage, meaning they'll play 3 games at home. And so let's just take a look at the teams in question, starting with the 5th seeded 1964 Chicago White Sox. Well, taking a look at the pitching staff, we have a couple of lefties, actually. Gary Peters was 20-8 that year with a 2.50 ERA. Juan Pizarro was 19-9 with a 2.56 ERA, so very, very close. And then they have a 3rd and 4th starter here. Joe Horlin was 13-9. He had a 1.88 ERA, actually. He had a better ERA, but he started a couple fewer games and didn't quite go as deep into the games as the other 2 starters, but was very successful, and he's a righty. And then you had John Burshart, who is their number 4, if they would need him. And in these best of the 5 series, there's a chance, depending on if the starting pitcher, the game 1 starter, can go on less days rest, he may get a couple, may go a little earlier in the schedule, I should say. But chances are most teams are have to use their top 4 starters. They, of course, have Hoyt Wilhelm closing games for them. So right away, pitching staff looks pretty good. ERAs in the 2s overall. 2 lefties to lead off the rotation that they're going to be using in the tournament. And so their lineup, we will get to in a minute once we see what Minnesota is putting out there. So the 65 Minnesota Twins, of course, have another big lefty, Jim Cott, kind of leading things off for them. 18-11 that year with a 2.83 ERA. He had 42 games started, which is just crazy. Crazy number of games started. Mudcat Grant was 21-7. He had a 3.30 ERA. Camilo Pascual, was 9-3. He had a 3.35 ERA, and then you had Jim Perry, 12-7 with the 2.63. So pitching's not quite as good ERA-wise, if you notice, than Chicago's was. And so knowing that they're going to face a couple of lefties, let's take a look at their lefty lineup. Zoilo Versali's leading off at shortstop. We have Rich Rollins batting second at third base. Tony Oliva batting third in right field. Harmon Killebrew batting in the cleanup spot at first base. Earl Batty is catching for them and batting fifth. You have Bob Allison in left field batting sixth. You have Don Minchner batting seventh, DHing. And you have Joe Nosek in center field batting eighth. And finally, you have Jerry Kindle batting ninth and playing second base. Yes, I am using DH, even though this is the pre-DH years. Still using DH for every team to get them an extra bat in there and to kind of even the playing field from that point of view. So that's their lefty lineup. The righty lineup is fairly similar. The only difference is Nosek moves up to the number 2 spot against right-handed starters, and Valdespino comes in. Sandy Valdespino comes in and DHs against righties. So that's really the difference. So you have Minchner drop out of the lineup against righties, and Valdespino comes in, Mincher moves over to first base, I guess, and you have Killebrew's at third, Rollins, I believe. Yeah, Rollins is the one that drops out of the righty lineup, and Valdespino comes in his place. So the White Sox lineup, again, they're going to face Jim Cott there in the first game. And so they have a lineup of Jim Landis in center field, leading things off. They have Al Weiss batting second at second base. They have Floyd Robinson batting third in left field. They have Bill Skowron playing first base and batting the cleanup spot. They have Pete Ward batting fifth at third base. They have Ron Hansen at shortstop batting sixth. Dave Nicholson is DHing for them in the number 7 spot. Mike Hirschberger is batting eighth in right field. And McNertney is catching and batting the number 9 spot. Against right-handed starters, the lineup gets switched around quite a bit, actually. There you have leading off is Tommy McCraw playing first base. You have Buford, Don Buford, batting second at second base. You have, of course, Floyd Robinson in right field. You have Pete Ward, batting cleanup, playing third base. Bill Skowron is DHing, actually, against right-handed starters. Gene Stevens is in left field, batting sixth. Hansen at short, again, batting seventh. Hirschberger moves over to center field and batting eighth. And then you have J.C. Martin catching in the number 9 spot. And just looking at their overall lineup, not a lot of high average hitters, kind of middle of the pack average wise. And, they have a couple of home run hitters, a couple of guys that can hit them out. Pete Ward, Ron Hansen, they had 20 or more home runs, but not a ton of power through the lineup. Of course, this is the 1960s, so things are a little bit different than they would be in the modern times. So, offense is going to be a little bit down, I think, here as we look at things. And then Minnesota, if we look at the Minnesota lineup, again, you have not a lot of guys that hit for high average. You have Tony Oliva, of course, 321. That's pretty high. But a lot of the other guys are not hitting for a very high average. Home run wise, they have actually 4 guys that hit 20 or more homers, and then Zoilo Bersali's hit 19, so a little bit more power than the White Sox lineup. But it'd be very interesting because, as I said, that White Sox pitching staff has great ERAs and is likely to hold the offense down in that case. So looking at the National League, number 5 is the 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates, and they'll be facing off against the 1969 Mets, the amazing Mets, which they're seeded number 4. So the Mets will have home field advantage, of course. Looking at Pittsburgh, we see Friend 18-12 with a 3 ERA. Vern Law was 20-9 with a 3.08 ERA. Vinegar Ben Mizell 13-5 with a 3.12 ERA, and then Harvey Haddix was 11-10 with a 3.97 ERA. So a couple of lefties on the back end of the rotation for the 1960 Pirates. Their lineup is actually pretty similar left to right. The only difference is they switch out catchers. So you have Bill Verdon leading things off in center field. You have Dick Grote at shortstop batting second. You have Skinner batting third. That's Bob Skinner batting third in left field. You have Dick Stewart in the cleanup spot at first base. You have Nelson, that's Rocky Nelson actually, here DHing, or excuse me, no, I don't, is that Rocky Nelson? Yeah, Rocky Nelson DHing. You have Roberto Clemente actually batting sixth in right field. Hal Smith is catching at number 7. Don Hoke is batting 8th at third base, and Bill Mazeroski is in the number 9 spot and playing second base. Of course, that was the year of the famous home run. And then again, the righty lineup is basically the same, other than Smokey Burgess comes in instead of Smith at catcher, but he's slated in the same spot in the lineup. So, so that would be the difference. And yeah, I guess I didn't put. I usually highlight in green the starters, or orange if it's a platoon split. If we look at the lineup for the Pirates overall, they have some good hitting. They have some hitters that are close to 300. Dick Grote hit 325. So hitting wise, of course, Clemente 314. So you had a couple of good hitters, or a handful of good hitters on the team with high average. Home run wise, though, again, Dick Stewart hit 23, but other than that, not a ton of power throughout the lineup. You had a handful of guys hit in the mid-teens, but not a lot of home run power. And I guess I didn't really take a look at stolen bases, but again, not a lot of speed either. Not a lot of guys with a lot of steals. You only had Bob Skinner with more than 10 steals. And so it'll be interesting to see how that lineup stacks up against the amazing Mets. So the 69 Mets have Tom Seaver, 25-7 that year with a 2.21 ERA. Jerry Koosman, 17-9 with a 2.28 ERA. Those top two are very, very good. Then you had Gary Gentry, 13-12 with a 3.43, and Don Cardwell was actually 8-10, lost more than he won, but he had a 3.01 ERA, and he'd probably be the fourth starter for their rotation. But Seaver and Koosman are big pitchers there. So pitching-wise, I think they're pretty set. Quite a bit of difference between a lefty and a righty, lefty-righty lineup. And I guess the only lefties are in the bottom end of the rotation for Pittsburgh. But you have Harrelson at shortstop leading off against lefties. Bobby File, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, third base batting second. Tommy Agee batting third in center field. Clendenon first base in the cleanup spot. Swoboda right field in number 5. Number 6 spot is Shamsky, and he's DHing. Jones batting 7th at left field. Jerry Grote is batting 8th and catching. And then Al Weiss is in the number 9 spot at second base. And again, against righties, that lineup's quite a bit different. So Agee's leading off against righties. You have Garrett at third base batting second. Jones batting third instead of 7th. Shamsky moves up to the cleanup spot and DHs. You have Boswell in at second base. Cranepool at first base batting 6th. Swoboda drops down to the number 7 spot against righties. Grote, number 8 again. And Harrelson actually batting 9th instead of leading off against righties. And if we look at their lineup, Again, you have a couple of good hitters in here. Cleon Jones hit 340 that year, so he's a great hitter. Hits for good average, but you have a lot of guys that hit below 250 also in the lineup. And then home run wise, other than Agee, who hit 26, you have one other guy, Shamsky, who hit in the teens, and then you have not a lot of power actually. Other than that, a couple guys could steal some bases, Cleon Jones and Tommy Agee, but offenses are, again, as we've seen, even these four teams, not a ton of power out there, and maybe a couple of guys that can hit for over 300 average, but for the most part, it's like low offense and good pitching. The real question is going to be if Pittsburgh can overcome Seaver and Kuzman leading things off here, who both have ERAs that are down near 2 something, in the lower 2s, whereas the Pittsburgh ERAs, the best is Friend, and his ERA is 3. So it'd be interesting to see how those ERAs, the pitching rotations and pitching staffs match up, and how well these hitters can do in those cases. So that's kind of a little preview of the play-in round. And again, whoever loses this best of 5 series in each of these matchups will go home and be eliminated. They won't get the double elimination. They'll be eliminated immediately. So that makes this series even more important here, this play-in series. And so it should be interesting to see what happens. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Who you think is going to win. Do you think the 64 White Sox or the 65 Twins will win in the American League? I've already seen somebody suggest that the Twins could win it all. So that'd be interesting. And then on the National League, is it going to be the 60 Pirates or the 69 Miracle Mets that are going to take that series? Drop that down below. Let me know what you think. And be watching for this series and this project to start. Again, you can always head over to baseballmaelstrom.com if you want to follow the action. And I don't have the 60 series up here on the front page yet, but it will be shortly, as well as all of my other projects. You can see past tournaments if you want. I've done the 1930s and the 1990s so far. So this is the 3rd tournament I've done. So you can check those out. Again, along with game recaps of every game. You can see the score sheet and box scores of every game and that kind of thing. And of course, the tournament brackets for those cases. So yeah, let me know what you think down below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a great evening.